Welcome to the Page 2 podcast, where we uncover the strategies, systems, and tactical decisions that move brands beyond Page 2 and into real visibility across search and answer engines. Today, we're talking with Aimee Jurenka, SEO and AI visibility strategist at Rickety Roo and founder of SEO Sustainable. Aimee has been doing the kind of work a lot of marketers are still trying to define, building workflows, testing AI visibility strategies, and figuring out what it actually means for a brand to be known by a model. She also recently got a very public nod from John Mueller, which turned into one of those rare moments where the internet validates months of very nerdy, very useful experimentation. Aimee walks through why keyword research is becoming less about individual pages and more about topic entities, associations, and what a company wants to be known for. She talks about measuring brand visibility in LLMs, why single-shot prompt tracking can create misleading data, and how mention rate, branded search, referral traffic, and downstream conversions may become part of the new measurement stack. But she also makes the case that old content, site structure, schema, semantic HTML, and even crawl logs may still have real value if we reorganize them around how AI systems retrieve and understand information. I really like this episode because it gets past the vague AI is changing search conversation and into the operational questions. What do we measure? What do we build? What do we stop doing? And how do we explain all of that to a client who just wants the phone to ring? If you learned something new today, take a second to subscribe to the Page 2 podcast. Leave us a rating or review and let us know it resonated. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay, let's get into it. Welcome to episode 119 of the Page 2 podcast. I'm your host, John Clark, and I'm joined as always by my partner at Moving Traffic Media, Joe DeVita.
Hello.
Today, we're excited to welcome someone who's been doing some really fascinating work at the intersection of SEO, AI, and workflow building. So I'm really excited to get into this one. She's currently the SEO and AI visibility strategist at Rickety Roo and the founder of SEO Sustainable. Aimee Jurenka, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
We got so many questions for you. There's no way we're going to get to the end of them, but I want to first ask by maybe you were surprised a couple of weeks ago when John Mueller mentioned you in his Q2 news. Did you know that was coming? If not, who's the first person to say, "Oh my God"?
No. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. So when I decided to start learning about AI workflows, AI in general, AI search, I did the thing where you delete all your social media so you can spend time doing that. Well, that left me with like LinkedIn. So, so now I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. So I was actually like going through and kind of reading the notifications and I was like, wow, that's weird. And I was like, well, that can't be right. And I was like, I'm just not looking at that right. I must just not be understanding something. And so then I watched the whole video and was like, oh my God, like, I can't believe it. So yeah, that was quite a, scream cry, run around the room, very excited moment, to kind of get that sort of not only visibility, but sort of that validation, that it's working on the big picture stuff is really cool. So it was amazing.
Yeah,
it feels good. That's for sure.
A highlight of the week, quarter, or maybe even year.
Mm-hmm.
But the article, the Sitebulb article, maybe we can start with that because it was great. I mean, it was a great article. And we'll link to it too in the show notes. But I just wanted to maybe start about the strategy, the research that you do before you develop a strategy. So in the article, you talk a lot about entities, traditional entities versus topical entities. And I wonder, because search engine optimization is still important too. So there's you have to do some keyword research, you have to do some entity research, and you've got to come up with kind of a target list for both. What are the keywords that are important to me? What are the entities that are important to me? Can you talk a little bit about the approach you take to doing that research together?
I'm a very much a holistic SEO. So those keywords that you're looking at, those are feel for those topic entities. So I'm going, getting to know a site and seeing what the site structure is, seeing what they're all about. You go ahead and you meet with brand, product, you see what they're doing. And then that's how you kind of figure out their core products or services. And then from those core products or services, you start asking, what did you guys want to be known for? What do you want to be related to? What is there? That keyword research fuels that. So that's that information that goes into that. Hey, in traditional SEO, here are the keywords and the type of thing we want to be known for, right? Here's what we are known for. Here's what we want to be known for. How does that relate to what you want to be known for? Do those align? Do those not align? Are these all content gap opportunities? How do we kind of look for that? And so what I'm kind of thinking about AI search, which is vastly becoming search, right? Because Google's like shoving it down our throat no matter if we want it or not, is kind of taking it a really big step back. So as you're doing that keyword research, that is purely research. We are probably not going to write, for me, right, write content based on a keyword, right? Based around a keyword or a keyword phrase or anything like that. We're going to be taking those keywords, looking at the bigger picture, grouping them, right, as a bigger picture and saying, okay, what was the topic entity, right, about this that this fits into? So it's more like strategy down instead of keyword up. So it's strategy down where that sort of informs it. Once you have, like I said, those topic entities, and of course you have your brand in there, you have your products in there, the same entities we're used to. But once you have those topic entities, then you're able to kind of go, well, okay, what kind of people are buying this, and where are they at in their journey, and what kind of content do we want to write? And so it's going to be a lot more based on the person and who we're trying to reach in that market, because AI is so big, right? We can't cast a wide net like we did with traditional search. So, we have to get a little bit more in there. And so that's how I'm going to be looking at that. So the idea of, keyword research, we get our list of keywords, we see what our highest opportunity is, we go and we write one piece of content on that. In my world, is going to be going.
There's another concept in the article around sort of, I think exactly what you're saying, sort of transitioning away from like traditional keyword targeting to more like association. And I think in some ways to do that, you sort of need to know what the models know about the brand as well to sort of, I don't know, I guess close some of those gaps, right? How are you doing some of that measurement? In other words, like understanding what the models know about the brand today and then sort of identifying what those things that the model might need to know, right? Are you looking at competitors? Are you looking purely at the brand itself? We had Melissa Pop on earlier this season, and she talked a lot about like personas and all that sort of thing. So I would assume there's probably even some persona analysis there too.
Yeah, definitely. So when you get into, I'm trying to think how I can phrase this without going completely off the rails, right?
Do it. Go
I know
off the
that we
rails.
all love to do in this industry. So when you get into, how do you identify where those gaps are or what's being said about you and what you want to be said about? Like I said, you first go into start back at the strategy. What is brand? What is product? What is that? What do we want them to know about us? Then there's different ways of being able to take that temperature. I like to do like a big list of what I call branded keywords. That's going to have the name of your brand in it. I know that's going to be a little round, flipped around, right? So those are going to be the things that when you're specifically asking about your brand, you want to get certain responses back. You want to know what's been done with that. Then there's your entities, your topic entities, your associations. Those are not going to have your brand in it. That's going to be the best CRM for blah, 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 right? And then that's where you go and you start to see is your brand being mentioned. That's where you get those two double sides of what do they know about me? And then also what do they know in general? So if I ask Gemini who Aimee Jurenka is, it's a pretty good list. It says certain things. It actually gives me credit for things I haven't done. So thank you, Gemini, and different things like that. But if I ask who one of the leaders in AI visibility strategy is, I don't come up. So those are really where you kind of see those big two gaps and how I measure it. 100% I look at what your competitors are doing. Who are your competitors? Again, I do things a little bit differently. So not only like, hey, who's a direct competitor, but also what is like an aspirational competitor? Kind of the shoot for the moon, hope to catch a star idea. If you're small, I had an e-com client, and if you're a small e-com client that deals with mountain gear because you own a mountain shop at the bottom of Mount Vernon, out there. So then you're going to be, looking to do REI, right? So because that's kind of what your e-com is about. Are you going to ever compete with REI? No, not at all. But we are going to want to see how REI structured their website and what they're doing that's working to see now what we can apply to your small e-com site, right? So it does, mountain gear and does skiing and does whatever. So I kind of do the competitors that way. We have your direct competitors, and we have your aspirational shoot for the stars competitors. And then that's how we start to get an idea of like, okay, well, if AI knows this X, Y, and Z about your competitor, right? Your direct competitor, but they don't know X, Y, and Z about you, then we have that, or wait a minute, we're seeing where we are different. Like, so they know X, Y, and Z about this competitor. We don't offer those products, or we're not in that market. We're not looking for that clientele. That's my favorite. So it's like, bingo, instead of doing a top 10 listicle, we can do a side-by-side comparison. And when we do that side-by-side comparison, we can specifically say, we are not for this kind of competitor. These people are great for it. We are not for this kind of competitor. We're for this sort of market. We're for this sort of person. And then that narrows it down. So when people are doing that personalized search, then that's a really good thing that the LLMs can pull in. Be like, okay, this is exactly who you're looking for, but we can also kind of also get rid of or maybe like filter out that competition for those competitors, or sorry, those clients that they're looking for, those ICPs that they're trying to target. So being able to do that differentiation, not the big wide net and then try to move it through the funnel, more of who are we specifically looking for, and just start to try to narrow that down as much as we can for the LLMs to let them know exactly who you are, what we do, right? And who we want to sell it to. And that's what I'm really kind of looking at. But like I said, it's going to be a very big picture because it's so big.
Right.
They're taking it from everywhere. So it's going to be very holistic. It's not going to just be your website. It's going to be so big in order to get that consistent information out.
I love the conversation around competitors because so often you'll, start a project with a new client, ask who they see their competitors are. And oftentimes it's such a traditional set of competitors. And then you do searches for keywords that they want to be ranked for. And those competitors are nowhere. And it's a totally different set, which could be the aspirational competitors, or it could be a conversation with the client around, maybe this isn't your target keyword that you think it might be. But I was curious about the branded keyword selection. We had Everett Sizemore on the show last week, and he was talking a lot about semantic triples. Is that sort of how you're thinking about your branded keyword set? Or is that sort of maybe a different discussion with the client?
I haven't thought about that in a while. Yes. Semantic triplets, I love them because I like the idea of being able to go through your brand and be able to define exactly who you are and what you do.
Mm-hmm.
I actually hadn't thought about applying semantic triplets to my branded keywords yet, but I'm going to now because that sounds really smart. It sounds really great. It's also a great way to go over with the client or leadership, whoever you're working with, and be like, here is, our semantic triplets. Is all of this correct? And does it have all the information we are in? If somebody said this, right? If the LLMs pulled this information, would this be the information we want people to see? So it's a really great way, I think, to go about doing that. And semantic triplets are just fun.
Right.
There's a lot of ways you can generate a lot of them really quick, and then you can narrow it down. You can edit, you can get inspiration from them. So that's, like I said, that wasn't what I was doing, but I am going to now. I was doing a very generalized, tell me all about Aimee Jurenka, tell me what you know about SEO Sustainable. Tell me what you know about, does Aimee Jurenka does this? And I talk about myself in third person right now. That's weird. So I've been really like, tell me, about the client, tell me what you do. So I've been kind of doing really generalized, but like I said, I know I'm doing this. That's a good idea. All right.
You've written a lot about tough conversations you have to have with client leadership group. It's like the same marketing executive who was buying an SEO service is buying an AI optimization service, but you have to kind of convince them to shift their investment strategy for, the next 12, 18 months or whatever. We're finding the hardest part of that conversation is in measuring success, but I wonder if you have a different take on kind of like this education part of our job.
Yeah. Traffic. Because of inbound marketing, right? They all want traffic back. How are you going to get traffic back? Well, we're down on traffic. Well, we're just dying on traffic. You got to have to give it up. And that's the hard part. That's just like, how do you explain to them, that's not coming back? And so I found that it's really good to put a differentiation. Be like, SEO was about rankings and traffic. AI search is going to be about visibility and downstream conversions. And so really making that strict line, these are two completely different things. Now, the tactics are the same. I'm an SEO moving into AI search. The people might be the same. A lot of strategies might be the same, but really the customer journey, or what we call the customer journey, like the funnel's gone. It got eaten by LLMs, gone, consumed. So that whole idea of inbound marketing that everybody knew, right? From plumbers to CMOs knew about it, right? They had all of that there. That's going away. To the point of, did you guys see that HubSpot changed it from inbound to unbound?
I did not see that.
Yeah, I'm going to add divination to my LinkedIn skills, but they did. And I was like, is this an April Fool's? Because it was right around that time, but they have. And I was like, geez, because really what you're seeing, right, is that's going to go away. And clients, CMOs, they still want that. They're like, traffic was what our measurement was. We understood that. We understood keyword, content, traffic, right? And then it's our job to move it through the funnel somewhere. Conversion rate optimization will move it through the funnel. So going back and being like, oh, hey, this is going to be brand new to you, right? And we're not going to be getting traffic, throw a funnel for that. What we're going to be measuring is that AI visibility for our topic entities, right? What we want to be known for. And then what we're going to be looking at is a lot of downstream conversions. We can get referral conversions, right? In GA4, we know that. But the studies I've been reading say that a lot of people actually, they do their research in the LLM, get out of it, and then what they do is a branded search. So we're going to be looking for like, hey, correlation, which we hate, right? We always hated it. It's coming back. Is, hey, we know that we increased our visibility for this topic entity. that we know supports this product. What we've seen is an increase in organic and direct searches that have sold this product, have booked that demo. And so we're going to have to start kind of looking at things that way because we're releasing our attribution.
Well, I guess that's the part that's tough, right? The old model of measurement was very straightforward and you could argue kind of easy: organic traffic, conversions, revenue, or leads. And now it's hard, right? That attribution is tough. So if I heard you correctly, are you saying you're trying to correlate maybe increases in AI visibility with maybe increases of traffic on site? Maybe that's direct, maybe it's organic also, maybe it's referral, and then sort of the downstream conversions based on that growth. Is that sort of how you're thinking about marrying those things together?
Yes, branded traffic. So
Got it.
that was the key part. Yeah, is branded traffic is how I'm thinking about marrying those together. Because when I think about right, how's the customer, how's the user going through on a user journey today, right? Where
Yep.
they used to go, right? You put it in there, you get your list, your 10 blue links, you'd make a list of 5 or 6 different things, right? That you see there, then you'd research, right? Then you'd come back. All these were different touches. All these were different times people could come to your website. And then they would get into the decision mode. And then that's when they're looking at your pricing sheets and they're doing different things, right? Then they might come back and actually convert. And all that was our organic traffic. And we could see that. We could see that happening. But now people are asking an LLM. They're getting a list of 3, 4 things. They're just going with that list, right? They're not going out and looking for more different things. They're just taking that list. It reduces the cognitive load, right? And now they're
Right.
starting to research that list directly in that LLM. So what can we track out of that? Not a whole bunch, right? We can track our visibility for what we want to know what we're for, right? And we can track if we're starting to see either referral traffic, right? Or downstream conversions. I don't see a place where we have our magic marketing dust any longer that we can sprinkle on that. Yeah, things getting there.
Yeah, they announced some awesome stuff at SEO Week with some of the new data that they're going to be, I don't know, opening up for all of us, which is really exciting. I'm still waiting. Google Search Console, where are you guys?
I know.
You had a great Earn the Stage presentation. I was really hoping to hear that talk, but you had a couple of great lines from the presentation. One was around, stop thinking like a rank tracker, which I think is perfectly aligned with what you were just talking about. So maybe to take that a level higher, how are you thinking about, I don't know if prompt tracking is the right word, but maybe visibility monitoring in the LLMs? Are there specific tools that you're using? Are there, I don't know, workflows that you're running? So how are you measuring within the LLMs themselves?
Yeah. All of that kind of started with prompt tracking. I did what everybody else did. Okay, here comes AI search, right? So how is this different than SEO? And how am I going to take what my brain understands SEOs and fill a slot over here? Rank tracking, prompt tracking. Okay, seemed like it made sense. And then something just didn't seem, there's just too many questions. How do you get that data? How do we know that that's the right answer? How do we blah, blah, blah? How are you polling things? How do we know that it's going to be personalized search? And the thing that I landed on of why my brain was stuck on it was because we don't have a SERP, right? So there's no single source of truth. And in SEO, there's a SERP. So we can roughly know that everybody at 10:30 on a Sunday night in San Francisco is going to see this result if they put in this keyword, right? Roughly. That doesn't exist at all. That does not exist in AI search. So I was like, well, how do we recreate a SERP? Right? How are we going to do this in AI search? How are we going to roughly know what everybody's answer is? Are we going to roughly know what that is? And so I, of course, started clanking away, like I think all of us are doing, Notebook LM, ChatGPT. She's too nice. She gasses us up. Let's go to Perplexity and ask, will this Claude agree? I'm very much that sort of, I just love it, right? So I'm very much doing a lot of that. And I was going around and around and around, and I got all sorts of crazy formulas and different things and stuff that wait a minute, that didn't make sense, trying to find stuff to back it up. And finally, after I've been clanking away at it for maybe 6 to 9 months, finally I was able to put in the right question, right? I figured out what I wanted my prompt to be. And they were like, yeah, use the Cochrane 1977 statistical formula. It's like a standardized formula. It's like the first page of every statistics book ever. If you take a statistics class, I haven't, but yeah, but it is. And it's what they do for when they're doing polling for voting. So it's how they do polling for voting. So it's how they get statistics when they're doing, right? For the world. Because I was like, somebody's already done this. This has to be somebody in the world that's already figured out how to take this large of a data set and then figure out, some sort of statistically valid number. It has to be something. So I went ahead and just was perfect, checked it out. used that. I applied that sort of theory to it and that method. And I did a three-tier sort of operation you can do. So I'm calling it a mention rate. I don't have sentiment yet, right? And I don't have accuracy yet. Hope to layer that on someday. But right now, what you do is in your list of prompts, it runs it from an API, and then it takes that list of prompts, and depending on what you want your margin of error to be, runs it a certain amount of time. So like if you want a 10% margin of error, you take 20 prompts, you run those 20 prompts 5 times in a row. You take all those numbers, you aggregate it together. That's your mention rate. For that topic, for that idea, for that entity. And so that's how I'm doing it. It's like a larger sampling of it. I have a couple articles on LinkedIn about it. Since I didn't get it, I was like, I gotta get this out there now. I'm about to burst. You know how it is. And I did actually create a mention rate tool on my website. So my website does have a mention rate tool on it now that people can go on. Like I said, it's not for bulk yet. You can, upload a whole bunch of different ones. You got to do them one at a time. It does, like I started running a test on it for myself for another thing I'm working on. And it does expect the breaks in between that you're supposed to have. So like I did it one step up where it was like, oh my gosh, man, just trying to wait for that thing to go. It's not for the weak.
Yeah.
Go faster.
In the age of instant gratification,
it runs it. Yeah. So, so for as far as like using that tool at scale or anything like that, it's more of an inspiration. Get a hold of me. It's not going to be able to run things in bulk, but it is there for people to use independently for free. You just got to have an API key, and it does back it up, that whole strategy. Again, my website talks about it a lot, and where I got the idea from, why it's there, and then sort of the statistical value when it backs it up. I am very, very much, after this process, very, very anti-single shot prompts. Single shot prompts, like, okay, I got my 20 keywords, right, or my 20 prompts, and they're all about the same thing. Let's run them once. Right. And then we take that score that one time you ran them, and then we do that day over day, like it's a rank tracker. And then we start to see how the line moves there, because you take those 20 prompts, you run them that day. If you run them again, you're going to get a different answer that second. So I don't feel like I feel like that's an imaginary number. That's just, you just like playing the slots, even worse than the slots, because they're a little rigged, but you're gambling on what your results are going to be. So getting a large enough data set in order to feel like you have a statistically accurate number, and then starting from there is where I want to go with it. Somebody else comes up with a better idea. That's awesome. I know Spark Toro did a big, like while I was kind of noodling this, they did that big survey, like ran, tripped, fell, broke my teeth trying to get into that. Cause I was like, this is exactly what I'm working on. I'd love to be a part of this. I'd love to see how it works. And it came out sort of the first, I was like, oh, they're saying prompt tracking doesn't work at all. But they said, no, as we pulled back, we saw that there was patterns, When you ran enough times, we saw those patterns. Garrett French just did one with Citation Labs, starting to see the same thing. I'm working with somebody else who's trying to do it where you just that single shot prompt 384 times, because it's the same theory, but just kind of formulated different. So if anybody else has ideas, I'd love to hear it. Love to hear how people are trying to recreate the SERP in order to get accurate data for our tracking.
I have like this hypothetical question that there may not be an answer for yet, but you have you're working with a company for a few months, and they know their mention rate. They've been monitoring their mention rate for a few months, and they have a really good idea of this is my baseline mention rate. And they can also see conversions and revenue as they're coming in, and hopefully they can at some point make this correlation that like when my mention rate increases by X, my conversion rate increases by Y. The question, I'm not sure how to ask it, but
that'd be awesome. I'm not.
We've had multi-touch attribution platforms for 10 plus years, which can't take an output from an LLM into their consideration. I wonder, like maybe they start to become worthless. But what is the model we can create to try to project improvements in conversion with better mention rate? Like if we're going to try to talk executives into investing more in AI optimization, like what are those data points we can use to say, you see this, it turned into that?
I love your idea of being able to because it's so new. It's so new. We don't know, right? Like we're all in the same point, as well as how do we go to our clients and bosses and say, hey, all this work we've done for you in the past is useless. Like I was joking that we all needed to get together in a secret society, switch jobs and be like, well, that guy, but me, so we can all like collectively throw each other under the bus knowingly, so then we can move forward. But really, it's that shift of traditional search. You got to throw that out of your brain. We're not going to be doing that, right? So getting that correlation of exactly how much money is this making us? The best I can think of, again, somebody else tell me if you got a better idea, is those branded searches. right? Because we know you get a certain referral amount. People are going to start buying within the platform. So e-com, I think, is going to get a lot easier. If we can get data out of that, right? E-com is going to get a lot easier to track if we can get data out of it. But that's the best I can think of that connection. I really like your idea is we have it long enough to know we can project out. Because right now when I'm talking to people, I can't make projections. I'm so like, this is all brand new. Here's what we're going to do to get started for a baseline. So I like that idea. So it was purely an AI visibility approach to trust a strategy. And it was really, really cool because my strategy had, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to make a content plan, you got to add content, we got to, try to figure out some specialized schema. I had all these pieces to it. And this was at Rickety Roo. So it's a smaller client and they didn't have the availability for all that. They're like, hey, the only thing we have is the site structure. Like we can do the site structure piece. You can organize it, do the site structure piece. Here's the one topic entity we want to be known better for. And I was like, okay, well, let's just run it. It was like my first official test. You guys probably know Celeste from Roo Labs. Director of Roo Labs was helping me do it and make it very official. I was like, this is awesome. Let's get this set up. And so we did it. We ran it just to run it. And this is all their legacy content. So this is all that blog content, that informational content that I just wrote and said it's no longer important. So it was just that old content they had. And it did improve visibility. Now, we did not do revenue. We didn't do traffic. We didn't do anything. This was purely, is this going to increase the revenue? The really thing super exciting for me was that told me, hey, all of us can now go, hey, all that content we made for you that we now think that the LLMs might want, we're going to organize that into your topic entities. And it's still going to be valuable. We're going to be able to repurpose that content and still make it valuable for you. I think a lot of leadership especially is going to love to hear that. Is going to love to hear that we have a way to repurpose that. We have a way to utilize all that work that we did in the past for the future. So yeah, but no money's attached, no leads, no nothing, no yet. Just that very basic core idea.
Maybe we could talk about the crawl logs. Are you mining that information differently now?
There you go, calling me out. I'll be honest with you, I have never reviewed log files. I just didn't need to for the strategies I was running for SEO. I could get most of the information I needed out of just a site health crawl. I need to do that now. So I am looking into haven't quite learned it yet, looking into, okay, what are the steps and what are the processes we need to be able to get those log files for all sorts of clients, all sorts of companies. Like when I create an idea, I really like the idea of creating it that the smallest solopreneur could do it on the smallest account and then also be scaled at the enterprise. So of course, enterprise, they all have Cloudflare or something. We can take them out. We can run through Screaming Frog and then we can learn from there. Definitely 100% want to do that. There's like new error codes or new to me error codes that you only see in that, like timed out. That means that the bot you're not fast enough for the bot. You're not fast enough for the agent, right? We want to be able to see that. I want to see your first because if we have made up for our first, and that's, the model hallucinating, which means it's a content opportunity. It feels like somebody's asking that question. So that's a content gap we need to fill. We're going to start seeing which bots go where, maybe start seeing that early, right? So, hey, we got this much bot traffic increase off of this is what we did. Now we are seeing, or I always say in this week, what I'm reading is saying that the crawling and the visibility really don't have much of a correlation yet. They're not seeing that, but at least say, hey, well, we're starting to get crawling. We're starting to see that. Maybe think of that maybe as impressions, right? Kind of.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, exactly. And then the visibility might be, our 1 through what used to be our 1 through 10. Is if you're popping up in the visibility. So see, again, I said throw all the old SEO out immediately and start organizing it in my brain that way because we're just there. It's so hard to change.
We've had a couple guys who have mentioned like the importance of like mining your server logs. And it's always felt really intimidating to me to like export that. Like I'm not a database engineer. I'm not really going to know what to do with it. But I guess I've never even really tried. Like, could I use AI? Could I build a tool? Could like John and I work together to build a tool that
go to Claude Code.
Yeah,
you could. Yeah, I started vibe coding earlier, I guess. So I was at a company. We were really, really ahead of the time where due to the P&L, right, we had to lay our entire content team off. And this is right after ChatGPT came out. So we were going to automate everything. Funny part, I was 100% against it. Thought it was going to be a disaster. This is going to be a total nightmare. But I wanted to play with ChatGPT. And I knew this was an opportunity for me to learn about custom GPTs and how it works. I was like, okay, let's do it. First month, got them all set up. It was really, really cool. Content was but wasn't too bad. Second month, absolute freaking dumpster fire. We were having our old content manager, she was editing. So she was still working for us freelance. She was able to mark it all up. The owner saw that. We now changed our process. So it was one of those, live and learn type things, experiment, fail fast, move on. I learned so much doing it. And I actually turned into a fan of AI over that. Like, what can we do then? Because I took it and was like, oh, hey, with ChatGPT, I was able to figure out like these content plans, and I was able to generate giant content plans with topics, optimize how we did our briefs. Freelance writer can always just go and pick one every month they want for the next 6 months to a year. And so we were able to cut down, quite a bit of, I think it was like 40% of our overhead, being able to utilize it. I was like, this is freaking awesome. And then I started seeing ones with like AirOps where it was like they had their co-pilot. You just start typing stuff in. So you just start typing requests in. And that was really cool because it was like, if I wanted or had an idea for a tool, especially SaaS tools for AI search, they didn't exist yet. Just go in and start like asking what they can do and how to do it, start working it out in your brain. Lately, I've moved over to Claude Code. So I know learners got me into that a lot. And oh my God, you guys, if you're not on Claude Code yet, go do it. Go do it. It's a vibe coder stream. So it's how my tools. Yeah, exactly. I'm doing some reports on it. I redid my entire website with HTML and custom CSS. I've never devved. I never devved in my life. I can read HTML, but that's about it. I don't know code or anything. It's amazing what it can do with the right prompt, being able to work through it and everything. So
we just built you do a technical audit, image alt tags always come back as like missing or as an opportunity. And usually what we say is, okay, client, we're going to put a stake in the sand today, and any new images moving forward, we'll put a process in place to make sure they always have an image alt tag, usually because there's hundreds or even thousands of images in, the folder, and it's just time consuming to do. We just built a tool using Claude Code that basically will use this is for WordPress sites, the WordPress REST API. It'll pull down every image that doesn't have an image alt tag. It'll use Claude to write it based on what it sees of the image. And then it'll give you the opportunity to approve it or not and push it all back up once they're approved. You can make edits in the interface. I mean, it's like insane.
That's amazing.
This took maybe 2.5 days to build.
Right?
You
never did that before.
No. And I'm going to make the worst.
Time to be alive.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely want to talk more about your automation, but I'm going to make the worst connection ever. You mentioned you became a fan of AI. I wanted to ask about query fan out as it relates to the topics and sort of entities that we were talking about earlier. When you do that sort of analysis around your keyword research or even sort of like entity research, how are you thinking about breaking up those query fan outs, right? So I've heard some people say, we're going to take all the query fan outs, build out an FAQ to answer each one on the same page, and then like push it back up. We don't think that's the right approach, but would love to hear how you're thinking about using that data, right? Because that's super interesting data as it relates to how you're approaching things around content and just entity alignment.
So of course I thought, like everybody else did, query fan out, that's going to be our people also ask. We're going to make more skyscraper content. Right? And this whole site bulb things that's no longer going to work. But of course, that's where my brain immediately went to. Like, this is how we get an excellent skyscraper piece. This is how we make sure we answer all the answers, all the questions that AI has and fans out. This is how we're going to be able to make all that content that's behind the scenes. Very much the people also ask, theory. Process tactic, I think. Yeah. And then I started really thinking about it like, well, what was AI really need? So kind of going back to that article, it's like, what does AI really want? When you're talking about like Google's algorithm and search engines, when I first started, I really thought about like, hey, what is their intention? What do they really want? What does the algorithm want? What is Google's number one intention? What are they really thinking about? Like, what do they want us to write for them? And I was thinking about like LLMs the same way, start there. What do LLMs really want? What do they really need? Right? What are they really looking for? And it's like, yes, query found's there. It's a great place. Like you kind of look at it almost like keywords as well, but they really want personalized answers for personalized questions, right? So if we're doing our query fan out research, and again, we're seeing things that do not apply to our ICP, do not apply to our personas, do not apply to our client base, throw it out. So I'm really thinking about it from that perspective of, hey, we really need to know who we're selling to first. Then we need to start doing this research. Then we need to see what they're doing, because LLMs don't want generalized content. they also don't need content about something that's not about you. Like, why would you waste your time and energy if it's not going to end up right in a downstream conversion eventually? So, that sort of idea for me is like, that's how I'm going about it. Now, once you have it, like if you have the information, I'm not doing skyscraper. This might change next week too, right? So this one might change next week too. It all changes so quick. I'm going to be doing individual pieces. Right? I'm not going to be doing an FAQ at the bottom. I'm not going to be trying to do answer everything in that block, especially with tokens, token availability. They're saying that the bots just read the first third and the second and the last third. A lot of that stuff in the middle gets cut off. If it's too long, it just gets truncated. Trying to say fancy words too early. So it just gets cut off and they don't read it anyways, So, AI wants that information, but also they want it as cheaply as possible. So the least amount of tokens they need to spend to get that information on the back end is what that actual, I don't want to say algorithm, but that system is actually optimized for. So if we can do smaller content that answers the questions that specifically target the people we want to sell to, I think that's where we're going to be able to see more of a lift than trying to do one long piece of content.
Age of retrieval.
Yeah, I scream at the LLM, right? As a little like vibe coding goblin that I am, it does depend on the project. I have a really bad habit because I'm so excited about it and I enjoy doing it so much. And I'm so like, this is a great opportunity that I get off and running. And then I kind of just gloss over a lot of those things. And then I end up like a lot of us where we send the wrong email or we have the wrong numbers or links that don't go to things, right? And it's like horrible. Quick, take that down from LinkedIn. Quick, blah, 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 because I get so excited doing it. And so now there's a process, there's really steps in place of like, all right, slow down. You're really excited about this part. You've got it all down. This looks great, but make sure you go take a break, right? You got to take a break in between projects. You got to maybe even take a whole day before I can come back and QA it because my eyes are seeing what my eyes want to see, what they're excited about. So that's a lot of my process for going to do it because you got to double check the numbers, right? You got to actually read every line to see what it says. You can't just skim it. You got to do a lot of things that I feel is hard for me to do when I'm caught up in the moment of, hey, this report's going to be so good, or I made this whole presentation for this client. It's going to be so awesome, or I optimize this and now my workflow is like so much faster. That human in the loop editing is definitely still the required one. Nothing great and fancy. I think I do what everybody else does. You get it, you go to another LLM, you ask them to proofread it, see if what they come back from, so exactly. GPT will always gas you up. Perplexity is a little bit more harder. If you really want core answers, you go to Claude. But, trying to jump around and see if what other LLMs say to try to help you sort of QA yourself. It's so different. Yeah. So I didn't have a lot of local search experience when I came to Rickety Roo. So it's been really interesting for me to take a lot of these ideas that I have that's very SaaS, very B2B, very, that sort of like thing where you got this 6-month roadmap, you can do this holistic plan or whatever, and then work on clients that are like, I needed phone calls in 1 month. What it's going to do, for the turnaround, and we need conversions. Like they don't care about visibility. They don't care if they rank for something. They don't care if they're in Ask Maps. That's not exciting to them. They're like, are the phones ringing? Very, very cut and dry. So at Rickety Roo, that's actually what we report on is that end metric for you. And then we'll back it up. If you want to talk about it more, or if we are seeing early indicators that you care about, we will do that. Going towards like, hey, how is this going to work? Like, how do I take my ideas and what applies to local? It's been really interesting. So working with Blake and Celeste on that, Melissa too, of course, like, hey, how do we take these ideas and make it a local play? Because we know that this client is not going to have the budget for this topic entity whole caboodle plan that I've got going on, this whole strategy, so how are we going to be able to do that? And what are we going to be able to do right on their product pages, right? So what are we going to do right on their service pages? How can we integrate this right now on their website for cheap, for easy? What sort of tactics going to work? Right now we're doing a lot of comparison charts, tables, so we're starting to do that. We're FAQs at the bottom of everything. And I know I said I wasn't going to do a bunch of FAQs, but like true FAQs. Celeste came up with this, so I can't take any credit, but we're doing FAQs for AI answers. So we are noticing Ask Maps, all that sort of stuff. It's now got local in there. They're answering people's questions, answering people things. So we are formatting an FAQ at the bottom of our pages, specifically to get into that AI search answer. So that's kind of where I'm at. Unfortunately, I'm not really doing the maps. Talk to Celeste. I'm sure she's available. She's got some really cool things going on with that and how to mine like sentiment and how to really look at that sort of stuff to be able to get in there. I was about to say, when it comes to reviews, right now we're just all concerned that they're all disappearing after this new guideline. and are valid, real reviews, right? That are right. And
The local piece has been maybe for me the most challenging to think through. How do you help a client optimize for AI? Because the services are they're not really differentiated. One HVAC from the next, one plumber from the next, roofer to the next. It's like you really got to think hard about why your client's different than their competitive set. It's been really hard. At least with like software, it's like, all right, there's some feature that's like, and if it's not that different, we can make it different and talk about it differently. But it's been
yeah.
tricky.
And that's kind of, I remember that was one of the first things that kind of occurred to me for is like, what's going to have to change for informational content. And I just got ripped to shreds too, because I was like, personas. And we've done personas forever. We've always, well, you have these large sites. Maybe you're working in enterprise. You have a brand team. You have a product team, right? You have a full content team. My guy doing HVAC, right, in the small city that now wants to be ranked in Seattle doesn't have any of that. We don't have the money for that. We knew generalize. We could just do it really generalized. Somebody who's looking for HVAC in Seattle. Seattle has, these type of neighborhoods. Maybe we'll just kind of go with that sort of angle, right? Where now it's like, we need to get specific. What neighborhoods do you go to? When were those houses made? Are they brand new and they need a maintenance program because they first-time buyers, they don't know what to do yet. They're scared. Were they built in the 70s? We need DIYers that are going to be coming in and doing it themselves. Are we looking at a historic area where you need to come in and do a complete, duct work and then complete retrofit of it, plus do, a couple, poltergeist ceremonies, whatever, to get rid of the ghost in there, because every old house has one. I have an old house. Every project's like that. Every project's going to be more difficult.
Yeah.
So like, what do you for your personas and stuff, I think, again, it's going to be a lot more detailed, which is a lot more work that we're going to have to do, a lot more time and effort we're going to have to do for local SEO than we used to have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the idea of highlighting the neighborhood projects too. That's a good one to think more about. All right. We're going to run out of time, Edie. We only have a few minutes left. So if you're okay with it, we'll move to a very short set of rapid fire questions.
Okay. I'm ready.
I'm going to ask a question maybe back to tools, because you're becoming a prolific tool maker. Is there a tool you were using 3 years ago that you no longer need? It's one subscription you've gotten rid of in the last couple of years.
Well, in the beginning, there were a lot of AI tools for content briefs. There was a lot of content brief tools just in general, right? We're going to be able to make a content brief for you. We're going to be able to spin this up. We'll make the topics for you. All of that's scrapped. There's no reason at all for me to have any sort of content brief generation tool that you can't just create on an LLM or make, in Claude code yourself. So sorry, content briefs. Sorry, companies that did that. I really think that was the first thing that we're going to just see go to the wayside, because we really don't need that. When it comes, my personal opinion, my crystal ball, to a lot of these really large SaaS tools that offer 25 different things, we can do this and we can do that, we can do that, and we can do that, blah, blah, but our base subscription's this much money. I think we're going to see a lot of them struggle, because a lot of people are like, well, I only need 2 pieces of this. I only need this one piece, right? So I only need to do this one thing for this one project. And if it works out, I might spread it out for the rest of my clients, but I don't need any longer to buy this giant tool that offers 35 things for the one thing that I'm actually going to be using. I can just jump over and create that myself. So I think that's where we're really going to see the shift sort of coming in.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm curious, do you have any tips for underrated sources for prompt mining? Good old research.
No. Here's my thing about prompt mining. How? It's so personalized. See, so for me, if you're prompt mining, then it's the same as like getting one keyword, trying to write a page for that one keyword to get traffic from that one, right? From that one piece of content, right? And then work it through the funnel. And I'm all about, we're backing it up. So we're not going to be doing that one-to-one anymore. Prompt mining isn't really something in my strategy. I mean, it could be useful. We could look at it, but it isn't going to be necessary, because what we're going to be doing is, right, we're going to be backing it up to the bigger picture of what attributes, what topics, what things do we want to be known for, what people do we want to reach. And so you don't need you don't need specific prompts or prompt mining for that. Again, keywords would work, right, to help you get an idea. Prompt mining might, be a good idea, but the idea of spending a lot of time and resources on that when you know that you're going to be writing for a personalized search. Clients do we want to reach? Kind of flip it around, not what are people doing, but what do we want to do? Who do we want to be, touch pointing? Then not needed.
John, we really need to work on our rapid fire questions. I feel like all these questions, they require so much. Let me try. So I read you did a little comparison article I guess you mentioned it, the difference or misconceptions made with schema versus structured data. Is there a big misconception with schema you feel like still people are confused by?
My Buzzword Buddy series, where, just the stuff that's kind of going around these days, right? And just kind of like really doing a little bit of dive of what it actually is. And I don't know about you, but I was using schema markup, right? And schema markup and semantic HTML, right? Structured content, structured data. I kind of just use those all interchangeably. So it was just one of those industry things where I also see a lot of other people doing it. I don't want to put anything on anybody else, but I know for me, I was just kind of plug and playing them around. But with AI, right, search, not only are the buzzwords back, but also it's really is a different thing for them. The semantic HTML is the actual organization of it, right, with the bullet points, with your H tags, with all that sort of stuff. Schema markup is the actual JSON in the back, right? And we don't know really what which crawlers are doing what. We know that Microsoft and Google has confirmed that their AIs use it, but that's about it. And then also, what else? Structured data that I was using. Yeah, no longer do I want to use those interchangeably. No longer do I think that that's okay. For me, our industry, because we do want to start getting more specific about what are we exactly doing for AI. That's not specific, not so much different, but exactly what are we doing and what does that mean? I'm a yapper. So leadership, right? Leadership and clients are going to want to know more specifics. So they are, if it's not inbound marketing, if it's not keyword to page, if it's not all the stuff I already know, then what is it? So the more information, the more specific information or tidbits that we can give leadership or our clients right now, I think that's going to make us be the superheroes. Like that's gold. That's gold. So anything specific that we can say, oh, hey, even if it's not something we're going to be using right away, or it's not going to move the needle that much, but any specific information we can give them about, if that's true, make sure it's true about AI search and how it works, I think is really going to elevate us. And that was just kind of started my head spinned off on that part of it when I was talking about like not mixing up things anymore, getting really specific about our topics, what we're saying and what it means.
Yeah, I think sometimes when the attribution and sort of the revenue connection becomes a little less clear, that deeper explanation of the things that are happening behind the scenes become a lot more important.
Thirst of knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. All right, last question. You produce Campfire Chat for Noah Lerner, one of my favorite people. I think he's doing so much for the industry really through the SEO community. What was the most interesting or maybe important thing that you learned?
First off, I still know Noah Lerner and I'm still learning from him. So I absolutely love Noah so much. A big piece I learned from him is he was, we were doing different things and he was like, I just share online about whatever I'm learning or whatever I'm interested in. Don't try and write thought leadership. Don't try to write educational. Don't try to write, sales copy. Don't try to, if you want to start talking to people and build community, make some friends, do that sort of thing, just write about what you're doing, whatever's got you excited that week, whatever your question is that week, whatever you're researching, whatever you're doing, right? It's just, is what you write about. That has been absolute golden for me. Nobody knew of me 2 years ago. Except for me. Yeah. So that's been absolute golden, piece of information that I take from him that I've just been running with. It's just, fantastic.
Well, you were rewarded with John Mueller's mention.
No, he's the first person to be like, oh my God. He was like right on the SEO community Slack, like, so he's fantastic. Like if you haven't joined the SEO community, go ahead and do it. The nicest place in the SEO community, instead of saying, I don't know, we just say, make me smarter. So then nobody has to put their ego in it. I really like that. Everybody just kind of throws out ideas and it's a great place to, hey, like when I was trying to learn what vector embedding was, they were right there for me to try to help me out. My brain got glitched on a part. And it took me a couple months to get past that glitch. And we just kept talking about it and bringing it up where we're at. And it's really, really a positive place to be.
I laid in bed talking to Gemini for an hour about that one. Like, no, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? Explain that like I'm a third grader.
Yeah, explain this to me like I'm a third grader.
That's a great prompt. Well, Aimee, this has been amazing. Thanks so much for taking the time and digging in with us. Let our listeners know where they can find you online.
So Aimee Jurenka on LinkedIn and aimeejurenka.com. I am the only Aimee Jurenka. So if you spell it correctly, I'm the only one on all the internet. So I didn't pick that branding by choice. It just worked out that way.
That is actually pretty
Yeah, so
helpful
that's what you
compared to
decide
John
me.
Clark, where there are like thousands of us. Thanks again for joining us on the Page 2 podcast. And if you enjoyed the show, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.